Well, Brendan O'Neill is calling for a lockdown amnesty in his latest Spectator column, writing, "Let's pay back all of the fines that were issued, forgive all of the rule breakers and move on. Let us recognise as a society that the lockdown was the strangest social experiment any of us is ever likely to live through, and that most of us did our best, but every now and then we bent the rules. We had to." Here, Brendan, I agree with that. Do you think Starmer being exposed is actually the silver bullet that maybe we needed to put the whole lockdown saga and all of those fines behind us?
It could be. I mean, I hope it will be. I have to say I'm enjoying the Starmer controversy only because he's been hoisted by his own petard.
Yep.
I mean, he was going hell for leather for Boris Johnson over Partygate. He was really pontificating about that in the House of Commons and elsewhere. So it's actually quite fun to see him going through the same process now. So it is enjoyable. But at the same time, I think that this focus on the rule breakers, and Boris and Keir Starmer are apparently both rule breakers, it's making it seem as if the problem was those who broke the rules rather than the rules themselves. And what I want us to have is a discussion about the fact that the lockdown was psychotic, and everyone I know bent the rules in some form or another in order just to make sure that they could have a normal-ish life during that period. So we have to, I think, have an amnesty for people who broke the rules rather than going after them like this.
No, I completely agree, Brendan. And clearly I find the focus on both scandals frustrating in some ways. But I guess I also found it equally frustrating when all of the liberal media and the vast majority of Labour politicians wanted to move on the moment that Starmer was caught. Because, of course, it was Starmer who was always demanding harder and stronger and more draconian lockdowns. And I think as a result, it's very telling that he thought he was following the rules, Brendan, maybe, when he just clearly wasn't.
Oh, no, the hypocrisy is just off the scale. I mean, it really is quite extraordinary. And, you know, the exact same people who were going crazy about Partygate a few weeks ago are now saying about Beergate, oh, you know, can't we move on? Aren't there more important things in the world? Don't you know there's a war in Ukraine? I mean, the hypocrisy in plain sight is really quite staggering. So I completely agree with that. And as you say, Starmer was making the call for a tougher lockdown all the time, and so were many people in the media as well, including those people who are currently defending Starmer. I think the people get the impression that it was one rule for them and another rule for us, and that is incredibly frustrating. But the broader picture, I think, is that the 2 years that we've just lived through were incredibly odd. None of us has ever seen anything like this, and hopefully never will again. The fact that students were fined £10,000 for having house parties, and people were punished for going out more than once a day, or they were filmed by the cops while they were walking their dogs, all of these things, you and I and others at the time said it was crazy. Yep. And I think it's time as a society that we recognise it was crazy and lay off and pay back those people who were fined in those circumstances.
I know, but Brendan, one of my big frustrations is that there has been no reckoning over the maddening rules. And I understand why people are so angry that Boris Johnson broke the rules, and I also understand why people are even more angry that Keir Starmer broke the rules. But there is no reckoning. There is no wider political discussion about the lunacy of the rules. And I mean, you say that we're never going to live through something like that. It was a botched social experiment.
Yeah, I hope we will never live through anything like that again. I hope,
because I worry we will. You see, now
the fact that we followed the fact that we followed China was absolutely deranged. You know, we should have done something like Sweden did. We should have gone our own way, had a light touch list of guidelines and advice and some rules, perhaps, but we definitely shouldn't have followed the Chinese model of locking down society, because that was bad for freedom, bad for the economy, and bad for people's health. So you're right, we need a reckoning with the whole thing. And that's another thing that worries me about Beergate and Partygate, the longer we obsess over the fact that Angela Rayner had a curry and Boris Johnson had a 5-minute birthday party, the longer that will distract us from the kind of inquiry we need to have about whether this was the right thing to do, how damaging it was, and how we can make sure that it never happens again. So let's focus on the craziness of the rules rather than the fact that some people, including the people who made the rules, broke them every now and then.